everything points to Michigan, even though Michigan has the better team. I have to trust the coaching staff. I feel like I know what I'm going to get out of, and that's Kirby. I know what I'm going to get out of Kirby and the Georgia Bulldogs. That was Booger McFarland on Tuesday night talking about who is more likely to win the national championship between Georgia and Michigan. The betting favorite now, the Michigan Wolverines, narrowly, not by a lot, and it depends kind of on where you're at. But that was a real point that the folks over at ESPN were talking about on Tuesday night. Who is more likely to win the national championship? They were split. I think there might have been one more for Michigan than there was for Georgia, and obviously the Wolverines pretty hot right now. Looking at everything they've done now, they have not. They've not played anybody, so there's that. But Georgia's not exactly played a schedule that's been brutal. But it's in a matchup between the two, we saw what happened the last time they played. Is Michigan noticeably better than they were back then? I mean, they're better than they look better to me than they have lately. But in 2021, they were doing a pretty good job of blistering people as well. Here's how that season went for Michigan, a team that they did lose a game, but that was this week in the season. So they went 47-14. They beat Washington 31-10. Then Northern Illinois 63-10. They struggled against Rutgers 20-13, and then Wisconsin 38-17. Nebraska 32-29. That was a 3-point win. Northwestern 33-7, and then they lost this week, the week of the Georgia-Florida game. So they're definitely playing. The results are certainly better now. Is Rutgers worse than it was? Is Nebraska worse than it was? I don't know. Nebraska's not very good right now. Matt Rule is doing all he can do, but Michigan really got their way into it with the win over Penn State and then the win over Ohio State, which no one saw coming. I'm just going to tell you, no one saw that coming, and they won that game 42-17. And then, of course, they throttled Iowa because the Big East West is just about as bad as you can get. And then they lost by 20. What was that? 23 to Georgia in the Orange Bowl. I think Michigan is Georgia's biggest challenge coming into this thing. I think that Florida State is probably the second biggest. When you watch Ohio State play, you can tell they're missing C.J. Stroud. You can that's evident. When you look around at Washington this past week, I mean, that was a really bad showing. And then, Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma, that was a really bad showing. And when I say a really bad showing, I don't mean winning at Auburn by a touchdown and kneeling on the ball. I mean surviving 1-6 Arizona State. I mean surviving going into overtime with UCF at home. Those are not the same as what Georgia dealt with at Auburn. So I think Booger's point, though, has to be taken into consideration. There is a lot going on right now at Michigan that's not going to stop. And one thing that Reese Davis said correctly, if you ask me, was that this is not going to go away. This discussion of the cheating at Michigan, whatever you want to call it, I don't know what to call it. I mean, it is against the rules what they're being alleged to have done. But so I'm going to use the word cheating with the phrase allegedly in front of it from here on out, because I don't know what they did and did not do, but man, there's a lot of reports right now about all of this coming out of the SEC from the Big Ten. I mean, it's just really a bad look, let me tell you. Our friends at EcoPoly got a great look for you. Let's just check out their Lakeview collection real quick, okay? So we talk a lot about what you can get at EcoPoly. 15% off any order through Dog Post. You're going to get free shipping. This, I've not pointed out this this coffee table yet. This is awesome for outside of the lake. We have shown you this, the Lakeview Deep Seating Love Seat. We've shown you that over time. They have it in the 3-person, the love seat, as well as the seating chair, which is very comfortable. You can get all of these sets in whatever color you want. Make sure you're checking this out. Now, they're showing you this sort of aggressive green, we'll call it. But You can get it in Aruba. You can get it, you can get the furniture color in pecan brown with Aruba as your cushions. There's no shortage of things. Listen, if you're gonna do a lake house, if you're gonna do a beach house, do it right. Use EcoPoly 20-year warranty, completely made of recycled material, plastics. I've been using this the whole season. It's worth your time to check it out. The link is down below. 15% off. Use the code and get free shipping as well. I think, you know, I I do think that the scandal at Michigan is going to drag out and be an annoyance. You already see Jim Harbaugh denying it, and then he goes to this whole thing about how the kids never get credit. Jim, listen, y'all are now the betting favorite. You're the number 2 team in the country. There's no doubting that. I mean, you're one of 2 teams that has played in the college football playoff the last 2 years. If there's a better program than Georgia, which there's not, it would be Michigan. No one feels sorry for you. You're obviously bending the rules / breaking them as much as possible, but that's not going to be litigated this season. It's not. Nothing that happens at Michigan, unless there's some sort of criminal activity, which I'm not aware of, this is all going to be mitigated and dealt with in the future. So Michigan can totally win the national championship this season, hang a banner, and then if they get, if they have to pull a banner down, it won't be the first time that's happened at Michigan. So, and, that's just reality. It's been a rough run this century, this last 30 years at Michigan and the sports they really care about. They've watched as Ohio State's won 3 national championships. They've watched as the SEC has totally dominated football. They've watched as we've seen 1 Big Ten national championship in basketball this century, if I'm not mistaken. That was Michigan State, Michigan's rival, in 2001 or 2000, whatever it was, 2003, whatever. It's just not been, it's not as good a league, the Big Ten, as the other leagues. Certainly not as good as the SEC is in football, and honestly, in basketball, that's changing quite quickly in this league. So, but when Booger starts talking about the coaching staffs, I would take Georgia's coaching staff too, frankly. You've had a lot of, turnover even at Michigan. You've had turnover at Georgia too. But a lot of these guys have been around at Georgia for a long time. I mean, the person that's not, that's new, if you want to call it that, Mike Bobo, I mean, I think he knows his way around Athens from what I can tell. He's probably been to Stripling's a time or two in his life. So I don't know. And then, the collective effort of Georgia, they continue to put it together all the time. And I think that's the part we're going to see when they head down to Jacksonville, is that it's hard to deny just how good Georgia's been. And the results speak for themselves. They have not played as well because of little things, turnovers, missing kicks at the beginning of the season. They've not played as well as they did for the bulk of the 21 season. Now, for the 22 season, this season's pretty similar to that so far, with the exception of not just blowing Oregon out, because they didn't play Oregon, and not blowing South Carolina out. But if you swap out the South Carolina game for the Kentucky game, I mean, I don't think South Carolina was ranked last year. What Georgia did to Kentucky at Sanford Stadium, it's really not right. But having to win a tight game on the road, that's not abnormal in the SEC. What was abnormal was what 21 did. We talked about it a lot in Dogstruction. They had a halfway close game at Tennessee for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then they blew the doors off Tennessee in sort of a slow motion blowout. All those games in 21, other than that, were, Georgia didn't play well against Charleston Southern. Georgia in 21. Georgia, they blew South Carolina out, but it took a while. I mean, that game, it took until the close of the half. I think there's this, and this may be gone now. This may be the one thing that's gone in terms of expectations, but it may be that, media and fans are no longer saying, oh, well, they're just going to blow them out in the first quarter. That just doesn't happen. I mean, that happened in 21 from time to time, but that just doesn't really happen anymore with the way the clock rolls and so forth. So when you look at where Georgia's at, where this thing is headed, and what's in front of them, for me, Georgia's biggest competition is Michigan. But Michigan's got to get there, and Georgia's got to get there. I mean, Georgia's got to get through this stretch of 4 games is pretty rough. Michigan will not face a 4-game run like this. It just won't happen. So we know that. They don't play in a league like the SEC. Georgia, unlike Michigan, has to deal with probably Alabama, but Alabama or LSU in the SEC championship game. Michigan doesn't deal with that. Once the winner of the Big Ten East gets to Indianapolis, they just hand them the trophy. They play the game, but they just hand it to the Big Ten East school. The West is horrible. So, the thing that Georgia doesn't have to deal with is what Michigan does, which is Penn State and Ohio State. So they're going to play 2 top 10 teams. I'm not going to call Penn State a top 5 team because a top 5 team doesn't play like Penn State did the other day. Well, I say that Washington's a top 5 team. They don't really deserve to be in the top 5 after that performance from Arizona State. But what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to put Notre Dame in there because they've got 2 losses, or put SC in there because they've got 2 losses. You've got to go with what's there. And for me, what's there is this Michigan Georgia, what seems like collision course, is out there to be had. I mean, I think right now Michigan would be favored in this game. I don't know by how much, but either team would not be favored by more than a field goal. Now, that's right now. Let's just see what happens after Georgia plays the Gators and so on. Let's just see if everybody gets to the starting line. I'm not sure we'll see that be the case, but Booger's got Georgia because of the coaching staff. You tell me what you think.